We have seen the village paths that whispered of unions, and we have followed the heavy chests of silver and cloth. But tonight, we step across the threshold and into the heart of the home itself. Beyond the laws and the gold, marriage in the Middle Ages was lived in the quiet rhythm of the hearth. The sound of a tool being reached for, a glance shared in the dim light, and the unspoken language of two lives blending into one. As the fire fades to embers, join us for the final chapter, where we discover the soul of the union in the simplest moments of a shared life. If you are listening at night, tell me where you are and what time it is. Welcome to Dreamy Old Stories, where we share slow and gentle stories from history. These stories are made to calm your mind and help you fall asleep. Within the shared household, the presence of roles begins to take shape through the arrangement of activity rather than through spoken definition. One person may be found near the hearth, guiding the preparation of food, while another moves between spaces, tending to tools or tasks that extend beyond the interior. These positions are not marked by boundaries, yet they form a quiet structure within the home. The placement of objects, the direction of movement, and the timing of actions all contribute to this pattern, creating a visible outline of responsibility that unfolds through daily life. To experience this arrangement is to notice how the senses begin to recognize these patterns through repeated exposure. The sound of certain tasks performed at particular times becomes familiar, creating a rhythm that moves through the day. The warmth of the hearth, the texture of tools in use, and the shifting light across the room all accompany these actions, forming a layered awareness. There is a quiet predictability in how these elements come together, allowing each role to be felt through the environment rather than explained through words. As time passes, these patterns begin to guide subtle adjustments in how tasks are shared and performed. A responsibility may shift slightly, not through instruction, but through the recognition of need or circumstance. One person may take on an additional task for a moment, while another steps back, allowing the balance to adapt. These changes are small and often unspoken, yet they contribute to a gradual shaping of roles that reflects both continuity and flexibility. The pattern evolves through use, adjusting without losing its overall form. From within, the experience of these roles creates a sense of quiet understanding that settles into awareness. There is no need to question who does what, as the pattern has already been absorbed through repeated living. This understanding does not feel imposed, but natural, as if it belongs to the rhythm of the household itself. The roles within the union become part of how life is experienced, forming a steady balance that supports the shared existence without drawing attention to its structure. Beyond the immediate tasks, the roles within the union begin to appear through the way decisions are approached inside the household. There is no single place where authority is declared, yet certain positions naturally form through habit and expectation. One person may stand closer to matters of provision, considering fields, tools, or trade, while another remains attentive to the interior needs of the home. These orientations are not fixed in strict lines, but they shape how choices are made. The physical presence of each person in different parts of the household reflects this quiet distribution of responsibility. To notice this process is to sense how attention shifts depending on the situation. The tone of voice changes slightly when a decision is being considered, becoming more measured, while the surrounding space feels more focused. The sound of objects being handled, the pause before a response, and the quiet exchange of looks all contribute to an atmosphere where meaning is carried gently. There is no sharp distinction between speaking and listening, as both become part of the same experience. The senses pick up on these subtle cues, allowing the process of decision to unfold without disruption. As time moves forward, these patterns of decision begin to guide the flow of daily life in small but steady ways. Choices made in one moment influence the arrangement of tasks in the next, creating a sequence that links one action to another. A decision about resources may shape how work is carried out, while a choice about the household may alter the timing of routines. These shifts are not dramatic, yet they build upon each other, gradually reinforcing the roles that each person holds within the union. The process continues through repetition, allowing patterns to settle more deeply over time. From within, this quiet distribution of decision-making creates a sense of balance that feels both stable and understood. There is an awareness that each person contributes in a way that supports the whole, even if this is not spoken directly. This understanding does not require reflection, yet it shapes how the household is experienced. The roles within the union become part of the way life is organized, forming a structure that guides actions and choices without needing to be clearly defined. Within the shared life of the household, the roles begin to reveal themselves through the way tasks are anticipated before they are spoken. One person reaches for a tool at the moment it is needed, while another prepares a space without being asked, as if each action has already been quietly agreed upon. These movements form a pattern that can be seen in the timing of hands, the direction of steps, and the sequence in which tasks unfold. The arrangement is not written or declared, yet it becomes visible through the coordination of activity, where each role finds expression in the flow of work. To experience this coordination is to notice how awareness settles into a shared rhythm that guides both individuals at once. The sound of one action signals another, creating a chain of responses that move through the space with gentle consistency. There is a sense of ease in how these actions align, where effort is distributed without the need for instruction. The body begins to recognize these patterns, responding to them almost instinctively, allowing each person to move within their role while remaining connected to the other. The experience feels balanced, shaped by quiet understanding. As days continue, small variations begin to appear within this coordination, allowing the roles to adapt without losing their form. A task may be taken up by one person in a new way, or the sequence of actions may shift slightly to meet a different need. These changes do not disrupt the pattern, but refine it, adding depth to the way roles are carried out. Over time, the coordination becomes more flexible, capable of adjusting while maintaining its sense of order. The household responds to these variations with a quiet resilience, shaped by the ongoing interaction of both individuals. From within, this shared rhythm creates a sense of connection that feels both steady and deeply embedded. There is an awareness that roles are not separate from one another, but part of a larger pattern that holds the household together. This understanding does not need to be spoken, yet it influences how each action is perceived. The roles within the union become part of a continuous exchange, where each person's presence supports the other, forming a quiet balance that carries through daily life. Within the unfolding of daily life, roles begin to reveal themselves through the repetition of certain actions that return at regular intervals. One person may rise earlier, beginning tasks that prepare the household for the day, while another follows with work that extends outward or continues what has been started. These sequences form a pattern that can be observed over time, where each role is expressed through consistent presence within particular moments. The arrangement is not rigid, yet it creates a sense of order, where each action finds its place within a larger cycle of activity. To move within this repetition is to notice how the body begins to carry these patterns without conscious thought. The hands reach for familiar objects at expected times, guided by a rhythm that has been shaped through many days. The sound of repeated actions creates a steady background, allowing the senses to settle into a feeling of continuity. There is a quiet assurance in how these tasks return, offering a structure that supports the flow of the day. The experience becomes less about individual effort and more about moving within a pattern that is already known. As this repetition continues, subtle changes begin to appear within the cycle, allowing the roles to respond to shifting conditions. A task may be completed in a different order, or the timing of an action may adjust slightly to accommodate new circumstances. These variations do not break the pattern, but add a layer of flexibility that allows it to endure. Over time, the cycle becomes more refined, shaped by both consistency and quiet adaptation. The household carries these changes without disruption, maintaining its rhythm while allowing it to evolve. From within, this repetition creates a sense of stability that settles gently into awareness. There is an understanding that the roles within the union are sustained through these returning actions, each one reinforcing the balance between them. This awareness does not draw attention to itself, yet it shapes how the household is experienced. The pattern of repetition becomes part of the structure of life, allowing roles to be felt as something steady, carried forward through the quiet continuity of daily activity. At certain moments, the roles within the union become visible through the way each person responds to moments of strain or difficulty. A task that grows heavier than expected may draw one person closer, not through instruction, but through quiet recognition. The positioning of bodies shifts, with one stepping in while the other adjusts, creating a temporary alignment that supports the situation. These moments are not separate from daily life, yet they reveal how roles extend beyond routine, shaping responses that are grounded in shared understanding rather than fixed assignment. To experience these moments is to notice how attention sharpens slightly, focusing on what is needed without breaking the calm of the environment. The sound of effort becomes more present, carried in breath or movement, while the surrounding space feels more contained. There is a subtle awareness in how each person senses the other, responding through action rather than words. The senses gather these details, forming an experience where cooperation is felt through timing and presence, allowing the household to adjust without disturbance. As these situations pass, the roles begin to settle back into their usual patterns, yet they carry a trace of what has occurred. A task may be approached with a slightly different method, or an awareness may linger that shapes future actions. These small changes do not alter the structure of roles, but deepen it, allowing flexibility to exist within continuity. Over time, these responses build upon one another, forming a quiet resilience within the household that supports both stability and adaptation. From within, this ability to adjust creates a sense of trust that settles gently into the experience of shared living. There is an awareness that roles are not fixed in isolation, but can extend and overlap when needed. This understanding does not call for attention, yet it shapes how each person moves within the union. The balance between roles becomes something that is felt through these moments, forming a quiet confidence that supports the household as it continues through its daily rhythm. As the days continue, the roles within the union begin to settle into the background of awareness, becoming part of how the household is experienced rather than something that is actively considered. The arrangement of tasks, the timing of actions, and the quiet coordination between individuals all blend into a pattern that supports daily life. These roles are no longer observed as separate elements, but as part of a larger flow that moves through the space. The household carries the structure without needing to define it, allowing roles to exist as part of the environment itself. To notice this stage is to feel how the senses no longer distinguish each role with the same clarity as before. The sounds of work, the movement of bodies, and the presence of shared activity merge into a single experience that feels complete. There is a softness in how attention moves, no longer focusing on who performs each task, but on how the household functions as a whole. The experience becomes less about individual contribution and more about the quiet continuity that holds everything together. As time passes, this integration begins to influence how new actions are understood within the household. When a task changes or a new need arises, it is absorbed into the existing pattern without disruption. The roles expand or adjust gently, allowing the structure to accommodate what is required. These changes do not stand apart from the established flow, but become part of it, continuing the pattern in a slightly altered form. The household adapts in a way that feels natural, guided by the balance that has already been formed. From within, this blending of roles creates a sense of unity that settles quietly into awareness. There is an understanding that the distinction between individual responsibilities has softened, giving way to a shared experience of living. This awareness does not need to be spoken, yet it shapes how the household is perceived. The roles within the union become part of a continuous whole, allowing the shared life to move forward with a quiet sense of balance and connection. The passage of time within the union can be seen in the way the surrounding world moves through its seasonal cycle. Fields shift in color from the soft green of early growth to the deeper tones of maturity, then fade into the muted shades of rest. The household stands within this changing landscape, its walls and spaces holding steady while the environment around it transforms. Paths that once felt dry become marked by rain, and later firm again under the weight of repeated travel. These changes create a visible rhythm, where time is measured not by numbers, but by the gradual transformation of the world itself. To live within this cycle is to feel how time moves through the senses in quiet and steady ways. The air carries different textures as seasons pass, from the cool sharpness of early mornings to the heavier warmth of later days. Sounds shift as well, with distant activity rising and falling in patterns that follow the work of the land. Light enters the household at changing angles, lingering longer or fading sooner, shaping how each day is experienced. These sensory changes do not demand attention, yet they create a continuous awareness that time is moving forward through gentle variation. As the years unfold, small developments begin to appear within the shared life, guided by this broader passage of time. Tools show signs of use, requiring adjustment or replacement, while routines adapt to the shifting needs of each season. The arrangement of the household may change slightly, reflecting new patterns of activity that emerge over time. These developments do not arrive suddenly, but grow through repeated experience, allowing the union to adjust in quiet ways. The flow of time shapes these changes, guiding them without interruption or urgency. From within, this experience of time creates a sense of continuity that feels deeply rooted. There is an awareness that life within the union is not divided into clear moments, but carried forward through an ongoing sequence that connects one day to the next. This understanding settles gently into thought, shaping how the passage of time is perceived. The union becomes part of this larger flow, existing within a rhythm that extends beyond individual events, allowing life to unfold with a quiet sense of connection across time. Within the shared life of the household, time also gathers through the repetition of familiar days, where one morning leads into another with a quiet sense of connection. The same spaces are entered again and again, yet they carry slight differences shaped by what has come before. A surface used yesterday is used again today, holding a trace of earlier activity within its presence. The arrangement of objects may appear similar, yet each return adds a layer of experience. This repetition forms a pattern that allows time to be felt not as separate moments, but as a continuous unfolding within the same environment. To experience this repetition is to notice how the senses begin to recognize the passage of time through subtle familiarity. The sound of daily activity returns with a gentle predictability, yet it is never exactly the same as before. The feel of objects in the hand carries a quiet memory, shaped by previous use, while the light that enters the room follows a path that is known yet always slightly altered. There is a softness in this recognition, where the present moment is connected to those that have already passed, creating a layered experience of time. As this pattern continues, small shifts begin to guide the way repetition is understood within the union. A task that was once unfamiliar becomes part of routine, while another may fade or change as needs evolve. These adjustments do not break the sense of continuity, but deepen it, allowing repetition to carry both stability and change. Over time, the household adapts through these subtle developments, shaping a rhythm that reflects both past experience and present necessity. From within, this repetition creates a sense of time that feels steady and unbroken. There is an awareness that each day is connected to the next, forming a chain that does not require clear boundaries to be understood. This awareness does not call for attention, yet it shapes how life within the union is perceived. The passage of time becomes something that is lived rather than measured, carried forward through the quiet repetition of shared experience. Beyond the repetition of days, time within the union becomes visible through the gradual aging of the people who share the space. The way a person stands, the pace of movement, and the manner in which tasks are carried out begin to shift over the years. These changes are not marked by clear moments, but unfold slowly, shaping how each individual moves within the household. Hands that once worked with quick certainty may begin to move with more care, while steps that were light grow more measured. The physical presence of each person carries the quiet passage of time within it. To experience this change is to notice how the senses begin to recognize differences that emerge gradually. The sound of footsteps may carry a slightly altered rhythm, or the tone of a voice may shift in ways that are difficult to name. The feel of shared space changes as bodies move through it differently, creating a new sense of distance or closeness. These sensory details do not draw attention on their own, yet together they form an awareness that time is shaping those within the union. The experience feels gentle, allowing change to be felt without interruption. As years continue to pass, these changes begin to influence how tasks are approached and shared within the household. Movements may be adjusted to match new abilities, or responsibilities may shift in quiet response to what is needed. These adaptations do not disrupt the flow of life, but guide it into new patterns that reflect the ongoing passage of time. The union adjusts through these developments, allowing each person to continue within the shared rhythm in a way that feels balanced and natural. From within, this gradual change creates a sense of continuity that holds both past and present together. There is an awareness that the union carries its own history, shaped by the lives that move through it over time. This understanding does not require reflection, yet it settles softly into thought, shaping how the experience of living together is perceived. Time becomes something that is felt through the presence of change, woven gently into the shared life of the household. Within the unfolding of years, time also becomes visible through the quiet sequence of seasons returning again and again, each one bringing its own pattern of activity into the household. The work of planting gives way to tending, and later to gathering, forming a cycle that repeats with subtle variation. These stages are not separate events, but parts of a continuous movement that carries the household forward. The tools used in one season are set aside and later taken up again, marking the passage of time through their return. The environment outside and the tasks within begin to align, creating a shared rhythm between land and home. To live within this seasonal cycle is to notice how the senses adjust to each return in a way that feels both familiar and new. The air carries different qualities as the year moves, shaping how the body experiences each task. The sound of work shifts with the season, sometimes quieter, sometimes more present, yet always connected to what the land requires. Light changes in its strength and duration, influencing when activity begins and ends. These sensory shifts do not stand apart, but blend into the experience of time, allowing it to be felt through the changing world. As this cycle continues across years, small variations begin to appear within each return, shaping how the household responds to time. A season may bring slightly different conditions, guiding adjustments in how tasks are carried out. The sequence remains recognizable, yet it adapts, allowing the rhythm to continue while accommodating change. These developments unfold gradually, creating a sense of movement within continuity, where each return carries something new while remaining connected to what has come before. From within, this repeating cycle creates a sense of time that feels both steady and expansive. There is an awareness that life within the union is carried forward through these returns, forming a pattern that extends beyond any single year. This understanding settles gently into thought, shaping how the passage of time is perceived. The union becomes part of this larger rhythm, held within a flow that connects each season to the next. As the years continue to unfold, time within the union begins to gather in the quiet presence of shared memory, shaping how the past remains within the present. Certain places within the household begin to hold traces of earlier moments, not through visible marks alone, but through the way they are remembered. A corner of the room may carry an association with a conversation long past, while a tool may bring to mind earlier days of use. These connections are not spoken often, yet they remain gently present, allowing the past to rest alongside the present within the same space. To experience this layering of memory is to notice how the senses respond to familiar details with a quiet recognition. The feel of an object in the hand may carry a sense of having been held many times before, while the sound of a task being performed may echo earlier repetitions. The light that falls across the surface may recall previous days, blending past and present in a way that feels continuous. These sensory impressions do not stand apart as memories, but merge with the current moment, allowing time to be felt as something that moves through experience rather than away from it. As this process continues, memory begins to influence how daily life is carried forward within the union. A past experience may shape how a task is approached, or a remembered moment may guide a decision in subtle ways. These influences do not interrupt the flow of life, but quietly direct it, linking what has been with what is happening now. The household becomes a place where memory and present action exist together, each informing the other through gentle continuity. From within, this presence of memory creates a sense of depth that settles softly into awareness. There is an understanding that time within the union is not only a forward movement, but also a gathering of what has already been lived. This awareness does not require attention, yet it shapes how life is perceived. The union becomes a space where past and present are held together, allowing time to feel continuous and connected across the unfolding of years. As the years extend further, time within the union begins to reveal itself through the quiet blending of past actions into present routine, where what was once new is now carried forward without distinction. Tasks that were once learned with attention are now performed with ease, their origins no longer clearly remembered. The household continues to move through its days, guided by patterns that have been shaped over long periods. These patterns do not call attention to their beginnings, yet they carry them within their form, allowing time to be expressed through continuity rather than through clear markers. To notice this blending is to feel how the senses no longer separate what has been from what is. The touch of familiar objects carries no sense of when they were first used, only the recognition that they belong within the present moment. Sounds that once signaled something new now form part of a wider background, shaping the experience without standing apart. The light that enters the space follows its path without drawing comparison to earlier days, allowing time to be felt as a smooth and ongoing presence rather than a series of changes. As this continuity continues, the distinction between earlier and later begins to soften within the shared life of the household. Actions unfold without reference to their origin, guided instead by the rhythm that has developed over time. The union carries itself forward through this flow, where each moment connects to the next without interruption. Small changes may still occur, yet they are absorbed into the larger pattern, allowing the sense of continuity to remain unbroken. The passage of time becomes less about movement and more about connection. From within, this experience creates a quiet sense of permanence that settles gently into awareness. There is an understanding that the union exists within a flow that does not require clear beginnings or endings to be felt. This awareness does not need to be spoken, yet it shapes how life is perceived. Time becomes something that is lived through continuity, allowing the shared existence to feel steady, connected, and quietly enduring. The presence of the community can be seen in the arrangement of neighboring homes, where distance is close enough for awareness yet far enough for privacy. Paths connect one household to another, crossing fields or running alongside boundaries that are known without being marked clearly. Doors face outward, and small openings allow glimpses of movement within, creating a quiet connection between spaces. The village forms a loose circle of observation, where each household is part of a larger pattern. This arrangement allows life to be seen in fragments, shaping a shared awareness without direct involvement. To live within this environment is to sense how attention moves gently between households. The sound of work carries across short distances, blending into a background that is both individual and shared. Voices may be heard faintly, not for their words, but for their presence, adding to the feeling of connection. The sight of someone passing along a path or pausing near a doorway becomes part of the daily experience. These sensory details create a quiet network, where each household is aware of others without needing to speak or act directly. As time passes, this awareness begins to guide small changes in how people move and behave within the community. A person may adjust their actions slightly when others are nearby, or a household may prepare itself with the understanding that it is part of a larger setting. These shifts are subtle, often unnoticed, yet they shape how life unfolds within the shared environment. The presence of others becomes part of the rhythm of daily activity, influencing behavior without interrupting it. From within, this quiet observation creates a sense of belonging that extends beyond the walls of a single household. There is an awareness that life is held within a wider network, where each action is part of something larger. This understanding does not require attention, yet it shapes how the union is experienced. The marriage becomes part of this shared space, existing not only within the home, but within the gentle awareness of the community that surrounds it. Beyond the arrangement of homes, the presence of the community appears through shared spaces where people cross paths without formal intention. A well, a small open area, or the edge of a field becomes a place where individuals gather briefly during the course of their day. These spaces are not owned by any single household, yet they hold a quiet importance, allowing movement to overlap in natural ways. The positioning of these places within the village creates points of connection, where the lives of different families come into gentle contact without needing invitation. To be within these shared spaces is to notice how the senses gather fragments of others in passing moments. The sound of a bucket meeting water, the faint exchange of greetings, and the shifting presence of footsteps create an atmosphere that feels both familiar and lightly connected. There is a softness in how attention moves, observing without focusing too closely. The presence of others is felt through small details rather than direct interaction, allowing awareness to remain calm and unforced. As these encounters repeat over time, they begin to shape how the community understands each household. A brief meeting may lead to a quiet recognition that carries into future moments, forming a pattern of familiarity. People begin to anticipate one another's presence, adjusting their timing or movements in subtle ways. These changes do not alter the flow of daily life, yet they create a sense of continuity between households, linking them through repeated observation and gentle interaction. From within, these shared moments create a sense of connection that feels steady and unspoken. There is an awareness that the life of each household is part of a larger pattern, shaped by the presence of others who move through the same spaces. This understanding does not call for attention, yet it settles quietly into thought, allowing the union to exist within a network of awareness that extends beyond its own boundaries. Beyond these shared crossings, the presence of the community gathers along the edges of daily activity, where observation takes place from a slight distance. Figures may pause near a doorway or stand for a moment along a path, their attention directed toward a nearby household without drawing focus to themselves. These positions allow for a quiet form of watching, where life is seen in passing gestures rather than in full detail. The placement of bodies at these edges creates a soft boundary between involvement and distance, shaping a way of seeing that belongs to the rhythm of the village. To experience this quiet watching is to notice how awareness settles into small details that pass gently through the senses. The sight of someone moving within a doorway, the sound of a task being carried out, or the brief exchange of glances becomes part of a wider perception. There is no need to remain for long, yet each moment leaves a trace that adds to understanding. The senses gather these fragments without effort, allowing observation to feel like a natural extension of being present within the community. As time unfolds, these moments of observation begin to influence how people carry themselves within the shared environment. A gesture may be performed with a little more care, or a task completed with an awareness that it may be seen. These adjustments are not made for display, but emerge through the quiet understanding that life is visible in small ways. The presence of observers shapes behavior gently, guiding it without interruption, and allowing the community to maintain a subtle form of connection. From within, this experience of being seen and seeing others creates a sense of quiet participation in something larger. There is an awareness that each household contributes to the overall pattern of the village, not through direct involvement, but through shared presence. This understanding does not require reflection, yet it shapes how the union is experienced. The marriage becomes part of this network of observation, held within the gentle awareness of those who move around it. Within the wider rhythm of the village, the presence of custom begins to shape how the community observes the union over time. These customs are not written or announced, yet they appear through repeated behaviors that carry quiet meaning. Certain moments invite acknowledgement, such as a visit after the union has formed, or the gradual inclusion of the couple within gatherings that mark the flow of communal life. These actions are not directed by any one person, but unfold through shared understanding, creating a pattern that reflects how the community receives and recognizes the union within its structure. To experience these customs is to notice how the atmosphere shifts slightly during these moments of acknowledgement. The tone of voices may carry a subtle warmth, while the presence of others feels more attentive, though never overwhelming. The exchange of simple gestures, such as offering or receiving, carries a quiet significance that extends beyond the action itself. The senses pick up on these details, forming an awareness that something is being recognized, even if it is not spoken directly. The experience remains calm, guided by familiarity rather than display. As these customs continue to unfold, they begin to guide how the union is maintained within the community over time. The couple becomes part of ongoing patterns, participating in shared moments that reinforce their place within the village. These interactions do not stand apart from daily life, yet they contribute to a steady recognition that continues through repeated experience. The process unfolds gradually, allowing the union to settle into the community without interruption or emphasis. From within, this quiet participation in custom creates a sense of belonging that extends beyond the household. There is an awareness that the union is not only lived privately, but held within the shared practices of the community. This understanding does not call for attention, yet it shapes how the experience of marriage is perceived. The union becomes part of a larger pattern, supported by the quiet continuity of customs that move gently through the life of the village. Alongside these customs, the presence of quiet judgment begins to form within the community, not as direct criticism, but as a subtle awareness that shapes how the union is viewed. This judgment is carried through glances, pauses in conversation, and the way certain details are remembered or repeated in softened tones. It does not gather in one place, but moves gently through the village, carried from one person to another without clear direction. The structure of the community allows this awareness to spread in fragments, forming a shared perception that develops over time without needing to be spoken openly. To sense this layer of observation is to notice how the atmosphere carries a quiet tension that is neither heavy nor intrusive. The sound of voices may shift slightly when certain topics arise, becoming more measured or carefully chosen. There is a subtle awareness in how people listen, as if weighing what is heard against what is already known. The senses pick up on these changes, forming an understanding that extends beyond words. The experience remains calm, yet it holds a depth that reflects the presence of collective attention. As this quiet judgment continues, it begins to influence how individuals within the union present themselves within the community. Actions may be carried out with a greater sense of care, or certain behaviors may be adjusted in response to what is perceived. These changes do not disrupt the flow of life, but guide it gently, allowing the union to align with the expectations that surround it. The process unfolds without direct instruction, shaped by the ongoing awareness that moves through the village. From within, this experience creates a sense of connection that is both supportive and guiding. There is an understanding that the union exists within a network of perception that reflects the values of the community. This awareness does not demand attention, yet it shapes how life is lived within the shared space. The marriage becomes part of a larger pattern of observation and response, held within the quiet presence of those who surround it. As time continues, the presence of the community settles into a quieter form of awareness that no longer feels separate from daily life. The observation that once seemed more noticeable becomes part of the background, woven into the rhythm of movement between households. People pass along familiar paths, exchanging brief acknowledgments that carry recognition without needing detail. The arrangement of the village continues to support this quiet connection, where each household remains visible in small ways, yet free to carry its own life within that shared space. To experience this stage is to notice how the senses no longer distinguish between observation and ordinary presence. The sound of others working nearby blends into the wider atmosphere, while the sight of movement at a distance becomes part of the expected pattern. There is a softness in how attention moves, no longer pausing to consider what is seen, but absorbing it as part of the environment. The experience feels calm and continuous, where the presence of the community is felt without requiring focus. As this quiet awareness continues, it begins to influence how the union exists within the larger setting. The couple moves through the village as part of its flow, no longer marked by the earlier stages of recognition. Their presence is understood through familiarity, shaped by repeated encounters that have settled into memory. The community responds in kind, allowing the union to exist without drawing attention, yet holding it within the shared understanding that has developed over time. This process unfolds naturally, guided by continuity rather than change. From within, this integration creates a sense of belonging that feels both complete and unspoken. There is an awareness that the union has become part of the fabric of the community, held within its quiet patterns of observation and presence. This understanding does not call for reflection, yet it shapes how life is perceived. The marriage exists within this shared space, supported by the gentle awareness of those around it, allowing it to continue as part of the wider flow of village life. Within the shared household, the signs of an ending do not appear as a single moment, but as a gradual change in the arrangement of space. Objects once used together begin to settle into different patterns, their placement shifting in small ways that alter how the room is experienced. A chair may remain unused for longer periods, or a tool may rest where it was last placed, no longer moving through its usual cycle. The structure of the home continues to hold its form, yet its balance begins to shift, reflecting a quiet change that unfolds without clear announcement. To experience this transition is to notice how the atmosphere carries a different quality, shaped by subtle absences rather than visible change. The sound of daily activity softens, not through silence, but through the absence of certain familiar rhythms. The movement of air within the space feels slightly altered, as if responding to a presence that is no longer there in the same way. The senses begin to recognize these differences slowly, forming an awareness that does not rely on a single event, but on the accumulation of small changes. As time continues, these shifts begin to influence how the household moves forward within its altered state. Tasks are approached differently, sometimes taken up by one person instead of two, or left undone until another moment. The flow of activity adjusts, creating a new pattern that reflects the change within the union. These developments do not interrupt the continuity of life, but reshape it gently, allowing the household to continue while carrying the trace of what has shifted. From within, this process creates a sense of transition that feels both quiet and deeply present. There is an awareness that something has come to an end, not through a clear boundary, but through the gradual unfolding of change. This understanding does not call for attention, yet it settles softly into thought, shaping how the space and its rhythms are perceived. The union leaves its imprint within the household, remaining in subtle ways even as it fades into the wider flow of life. Beyond the interior of the household, the change becomes visible in the way the surrounding environment begins to reflect a different pattern of use. Paths that were once walked together are now marked by a single set of footsteps, their lines appearing slightly narrower as they are repeated over time. The doorway opens and closes with a different rhythm, and the spaces outside the home hold a quieter presence. Tools that were once carried outward in pairs may now rest longer before being used again. These external details gather slowly, forming a picture of transition that is shaped through absence rather than declaration. To experience this shift is to notice how the senses begin to respond to a quieter arrangement of sound and movement. The echo of footsteps carries differently when fewer voices accompany it, and the surrounding air feels more open in a way that is difficult to define. The familiar sounds of shared work become less layered, creating a softer texture within the environment. There is a gentle awareness in how these changes are felt, not as something sudden, but as a gradual easing of presence that unfolds across time. As days pass, the altered pattern begins to guide new ways of moving through both the household and its surroundings. Tasks that once followed a shared rhythm are now arranged in a different sequence, shaped by the needs of a single presence. The use of space adjusts in response, allowing certain areas to become less active while others take on new importance. These changes unfold naturally, without direction, forming a pattern that reflects the continuation of life within a different balance. From within, this experience creates a quiet awareness of change that feels steady rather than abrupt. There is an understanding that the ending of the union is not confined to a single moment, but extends through the way life continues afterward. This awareness settles gently into thought, allowing the transition to be felt as part of an ongoing flow. The presence that once shaped the space remains in subtle ways, carried forward within the patterns that have been quietly altered. Within the unfolding of this transition, attention begins to gather around the objects that remain behind, each one holding a quiet connection to what has passed. A garment may stay folded in a place where it was last set down, or a tool may rest with a familiarity that suggests repeated use by more than one hand. These objects do not announce their significance, yet their presence carries a subtle weight. They occupy the same spaces as before, but their meaning begins to shift, shaped by the absence of the person who once shared them. To encounter these objects is to notice how the senses respond with a quiet recognition that is difficult to name. The touch of fabric may feel slightly different, not because it has changed, but because of how it is experienced. The sound of an object being moved may carry an echo of earlier moments, blending past and present within a single action. There is a softness in this awareness, where memory moves gently through the senses without drawing focus. The experience remains calm, shaped by familiarity rather than by loss alone. As time continues, these objects begin to find new places within the flow of daily life. Some may be used again, gradually becoming part of a different pattern, while others may remain where they are, holding their position without being disturbed. These changes do not happen all at once, but unfold through small decisions that are often unspoken. The household adjusts to the presence of these objects in new ways, allowing them to either return to use or remain as quiet reminders within the space. From within, this interaction with objects creates a sense of continuity that carries both presence and absence together. There is an awareness that what remains holds a connection to what has ended, forming a bridge between past and present. This understanding does not call for attention, yet it shapes how the space is experienced. The union, though no longer active, continues to be felt through these objects, each one carrying a trace that lingers gently within the household. Within the passage of time, the memory of the union begins to move through the rhythms of daily life, appearing in moments that arise without intention. A task may be carried out in a way that reflects how it was once shared, or a familiar action may pause briefly before continuing in a different form. These patterns are not deliberate, yet they carry a quiet trace of what has been. The structure of daily life continues to unfold, but it holds within it small echoes that connect present actions to earlier experience. To experience this presence of memory is to notice how the senses respond with a gentle recognition that comes and goes. The sound of a repeated action may feel layered, as if carrying more than its immediate meaning, while the movement of hands may follow a path shaped by earlier habits. There is a softness in how these impressions appear, not as interruptions, but as quiet additions to the moment. The experience remains calm, allowing memory to move through it without drawing attention away from the present. As time continues, these echoes begin to shift, becoming less tied to specific moments and more integrated into the ongoing flow of life. The patterns that once carried a clear connection begin to blend into new routines, forming a continuity that includes both past and present. These changes unfold gradually, allowing memory to settle into the structure of daily living without standing apart from it. The household adapts to this presence, carrying it forward in a way that feels natural and unforced. From within, this process creates a sense of continuity that extends beyond the ending itself. There is an awareness that the union has not disappeared entirely, but has become part of the way life is experienced moving forward. This understanding does not require reflection, yet it shapes how the passage of time is felt. The ending becomes part of a larger flow, where memory and present life exist together in quiet balance. Beyond the household, the trace of the union begins to settle into the wider community, carried through quiet recognition rather than direct mention. Neighbors adjust their greetings in small ways, their tone shifting slightly as they acknowledge the change without drawing attention to it. The movement of one person along familiar paths is received differently, not through words, but through a shared understanding that has formed over time. The village continues its rhythm, yet it holds within it a subtle awareness that reflects the altered state of the union, shaping how presence is received. To experience this within the community is to notice how the atmosphere carries a gentle sensitivity that moves through shared spaces. The sound of voices may soften briefly when certain moments arise, and the pace of interaction may adjust in ways that feel instinctive rather than planned. There is a quiet attentiveness in how others respond, offering space without withdrawing entirely. The senses pick up on these shifts, forming an awareness that extends beyond individual experience, connecting the household to the wider environment in a subtle and continuous way. As time moves forward, this shared awareness begins to settle into a new form of familiarity within the community. The initial recognition of change gives way to a quieter acceptance, where the altered presence becomes part of the everyday pattern. Interactions continue, shaped by the understanding that has developed, yet no longer marked by the earlier sense of adjustment. The community carries this change within its ongoing rhythm, allowing life to proceed without interruption. From within, this process creates a sense of belonging that remains even as the union has ended. There is an awareness that the individual continues to be held within the structure of the community, supported by its quiet continuity. This understanding does not require attention, yet it shapes how life is experienced beyond the household. The trace of the union becomes part of the larger pattern, carried forward through the shared presence of those who surround it. As time continues to unfold, the trace of the union begins to settle into a quieter layer of existence, no longer held in active awareness, yet still present within the structure of life. The household, the paths, and the surrounding community carry forward without pause, but they hold within them small alterations that have become part of their form. The spaces once shaped by shared presence now reflect a different balance, not through absence alone, but through the way they have adapted. The environment absorbs what has changed, allowing it to become part of the larger pattern. To experience this stage is to notice how the senses no longer distinguish the ending as something separate from the flow of life. The sounds of daily activity continue, the movement through familiar spaces carries on, and the atmosphere feels whole in a quiet and steady way. There is no sharp boundary between what was and what is, only a gradual blending that allows the present to hold traces of the past without drawing attention to them. The experience feels complete, shaped by continuity rather than interruption. As life moves forward, the memory of the union becomes part of a wider understanding that extends beyond individual moments. It is carried within habits, within the arrangement of spaces, and within the quiet recognition of those who remain. These elements do not stand apart, but become woven into the ongoing rhythm of existence. The process unfolds naturally, allowing what has ended to contribute to what continues, forming a connection that does not require acknowledgement. From within, this final stage creates a sense of calm acceptance that settles gently into awareness. There is an understanding that endings do not remove what has been, but allow it to take on a different form within the flow of time. This awareness does not call for reflection, yet it shapes how life is perceived. The union, though no longer present in its original form, continues to exist as a quiet trace within the larger structure of society, carried forward through the gentle continuity of living.